The first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the ceiling. It was pale blue, smooth, and humming faintly with embedded light strips. Not a human ceiling, not any station I recognized. I blinked twice, let my vision settle, and did a quiet body check the way my old staff sergeant had taught me. Start at the feet, work up, catalog damage before you move anything important. Feet, fine. Legs, stiff, but working. Ribs. 3 of them were singing at me in that deep, bone-level way that meant cracked, not broken clean through. Manageable. Left shoulder. That was the loud one. I'd felt the collarbone go when the bulkhead dropped. There'd been a sound like a green branch snapping, and then a white flash of pain so sharp it had almost made me laugh. That had been roughly 6 hours ago. I sat up. Behind me, someone made a sound I had never heard from any living creature before. It was somewhere between a whistle and a gasp, and it was followed by complete silence, so total that I could hear my own pulse in my ears. There were 3 of them standing near a row of equipment panels, and all 3 had stopped moving entirely. The tall one, insectoid, pale green, with 6 arms it was apparently forgetting how to use, had dropped a scanner. It was rolling slowly across the floor, and nobody was picking it up. The small luminescent one near the far wall had both hands pressed flat against its own face. The old one, the one with translucent skin through which I could faintly see the slow movement of internal structures, was simply staring at me. Its mouth was open. Whatever it had been about to say had apparently decided not to come out. I looked down at myself. Medical wrap on the forearm. Someone had improved on the field cauterization I had done myself in Corridor 7. I appreciated that. The arm had been leaking in a way I found inconvenient rather than alarming, and I hadn't had time to address it properly during the evacuation. "Good morning," I said, because I didn't know what else to open with. Nobody answered. The scanner finished its journey and bumped gently into the base of a cabinet. I swung my legs off the table. The ribs voiced their objection. I acknowledged the objection and moved anyway, because the table was cold and I wanted to stand, and also because I had a strong feeling that if I stayed horizontal much longer, someone was going to try to stop me from doing something I needed to do. "Where is my kit?" I asked. "And is there a mission board on this ship, or do I have to find the communications bay myself?" The tall insectoid one, I would later learn its name translated roughly to Sketh 4, which was a designation rather than a name, but it answered to it, finally moved. It took one step toward me, then stopped as if it had walked into something invisible. "You are sitting up," it said. The translation came through a small speaker embedded in the wall near my ear, voice flat and slightly delayed in the way all coalition translation systems were. "Yes," I agreed. "Your clavicle is fractured in 2 locations. I know. I felt it happen." "You felt it happen," it repeated, slowly, in a tone that suggested it was not quite processing what I was saying. "And then what did you do?" "Held the pressure seal on airlock 9, with my right arm instead. Took about 40 minutes. The left arm wasn't reliable after that, so I switched tasks." I looked around the room. "Is there water?" "I'm thirsty." The luminescent one made a sound. I would learn later that its species cried when they experienced what they called mind grief, a state of profound confusion that the body could not process any other way. At the time, I just thought it was having some kind of reaction, and felt mildly guilty for causing it. The old one moved. It walked to a chair, and this was apparently significant, because both other medics turned to watch it do so, as if a chair had never been sat in before, and lowered itself down very carefully. Then it pulled a data screen toward itself and began reading. Its fingers moved slowly. It read. Then it read again. Then it put the screen down and looked at me for a long time without speaking. I found some water in a container near the table. It tasted faintly metallic, which was standard for recycled ship water across most coalition vessels. I drank all of it. "You were functional," the old one said finally, "for 6 hours after sustaining those injuries." "Functional is generous," I said. "I was moving. There's a difference. You evacuated 14 civilians. 13 made it to the transport. 14th had a bad leg, so I carried her the last corridor and a half." I paused. "She made it." I checked before I passed out. There was another silence. It had a different quality to this one, heavier somehow, like the room itself was trying to find somewhere to put what I had just said. Sketh 4 picked up its scanner from the floor. It did not scan anything with it. It just held it, like it had forgotten what the device was for. "The chemical burns on your right palm," it said. They are 3 days old. Panel fire on the Yenix station job. I had gloves on, but they were the wrong grade for that kind of heat. It wasn't serious. The tissue damage extends to the second layer of skin across 4 fingers. Right. But fingers still work. I tested them. I wiggled them to demonstrate. The old scar tissue pulled slightly, and complained in the quiet way Burns always did, but the motion was full and clean. See? Sketh4 set the scanner down on a counter, gently, like it was being careful with something fragile, except I was fairly sure it was being careful with itself. The old one, the Quelith, I would later be told, a title as much as a species name, given only to physicians who had practiced for more than 100 years across multiple star systems, finally spoke in a longer sequence of sounds. The translation took a moment. I have treated Kreth warriors, it said, species evolved in high-gravity environments with skeletal density 4 times your own. I have treated Dorathi berserkers, whose nervous systems produce natural pain-suppressing compounds during combat. I have treated Yulani deep divers, who can redirect blood flow to their core organs and sustain injury to their limbs for hours without registering distress. It paused. None of them have ever sat up and asked me where their kit was. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a medical concern, so I nodded and said nothing. Can I ask you something? Sketh4 said. It was looking at me with an expression its species used for situations they had not encountered before, which apparently involved holding very still and tilting the head to one side. Sure, when the collarbone broke. In that first moment, was there pain? I thought about it honestly. I owed it an honest answer, because it seemed like the kind of question it had been working up to for a while. Yes, I said. A lot of it. For about 2 seconds it was the only thing that existed. And then I counted the people who still needed to get out. I pulled lightly at the medical wrap on my forearm, checking the edge. It was well done, clean. I had 13 left at that point. The collarbone had to wait. The luminescent medic made the mind grief sound again, louder this time. I looked at it. Are you all right? It did not answer, which I took to mean it needed a moment. Here is what I did not say to them, because they did not ask in quite the right way, and because explaining it felt strange, like being asked to explain why you breathe out after you breathe in. I did not do anything remarkable in that station. I know what remarkable looks like. My grandmother told me about a man from her city who walked 4 kilometers with 2 broken legs after an industrial accident to go get help for his co-workers, because the radio was down and he was the only one who could move. She told me about a woman from the war before her, who held a defensive position for 11 hours, with a wound in her side that doctors later said should have ended her in the first 2. She did not tell me these stories as examples of extraordinary people. She told them the way people pass on recipes or directions, as information, as context, as this is how things are sometimes done. We are not a species that finds it easy to stop. I don't know if that is something to be proud of, or just something that is true. We are built to keep going a little longer than makes sense, and the reason is almost never about ourselves. It is almost always about whoever is still in the corridor, still at the airlock, still waiting. The crash came about 20 minutes after I stood up. I know the signs well enough by now. The gray that creeps in from the edges of vision, the way sound goes slightly underwater, the sudden and complete absence of the adrenaline that has been running the whole operation, stepping politely aside now that it has decided the emergency is over, leaving behind it a very clear picture of everything the body has been trying to tell you for the past 6 hours. I sat back down on the table, because the floor looked far away and unfriendly. Okay, I said. I think I'm going to need that fluid line now. All 3 medics moved at once, which was the most coordinated they had been since I woke up. Equipment appeared. Lines were prepared. Sketh4 reached for my left arm, and I redirected it to the right. Better vein on the right, I said. The left one is collapsed. I've been squeezing things with it. Sketh4 stopped. You know which veins are collapsed. I've had lines put in before. I could feel the gray getting heavier. Double fluid line if you have it. I usually run dry by the time things calm down. I paused, because keeping sentences in order was starting to require effort. If I stop talking, don't be alarmed. I do that sometimes. Sketh4 leaned in slightly. You lose consciousness? Sometimes. When things finally stop, I felt my grip loosen on the edge of the table. I wake up though. You wake up, it said. Usually. I smiled. I think, usually is good enough. Then the ceiling was very close, and then it wasn't there at all. They told me later that I was out for 9 hours, that my blood pressure had dropped to a level their equipment initially flagged as a sensor error because it was not compatible with conscious function in any species they had records on, that the Queelith had not left the room for the full 9 hours, which was, apparently, a thing that did not happen. When I opened my eyes again, all 3 of them were still there. I looked at this for a moment without saying anything. "You all stayed," I said. "Standard observation procedure," the luminescent medic said. Its voice was steadier now. It had stopped the mind grief sound, though it looked like the effort had cost it something. "Is it?" A pause. "No," it admitted. "I didn't push it. It was kind of them, and I said so, and that seemed to make things worse somehow, so I changed the subject and asked for more of the metallic water. Sketh 4 brought it. It hovered near the edge of the bed for a moment, with the slightly uncertain energy of something that has been thinking about a question for a long time and is not sure whether asking it is appropriate. "Was there ever a point," it said carefully, "where you considered stopping? During the mission, where you thought that what you were dealing with was too much to continue through?" I drank half the water before answering. "Yes," I said, "when the collarbone went. That 2 seconds I told you about. I thought back to it. The bright specific pain, the way the world had narrowed to a single white point. In that 2 seconds I thought very clearly that I was done, that I couldn't do it. What changed? I heard someone calling from further down the corridor. I looked at the water container. There was a kid, maybe 10 years old, by human reckoning. Couldn't get the emergency door to respond, just calling out in the dark. Sketh 4 was quiet. After that I stopped thinking about the shoulder, I said. It was still broken. It hurt the entire time, but it went to the back. It waited. I handed back the empty container. Pain is very patient when you give it somewhere to wait. The Queelith, who had been listening from its chair without speaking, made a low sound that the translation matrix rendered as a thoughtful hum. It looked at its data screen. Then it looked at me. "I am going to write a report," it said, "that will likely be questioned by everyone who reads it. Do you need me to sign something?" "No. I need you to rest for 4 days." I started to object. It held up one translucent hand with the calm authority of someone who had been alive long enough to be unmoved by argument. 4 days, it said again, "after which you may ask about mission reassignment all you like." I settled back against the table. The ribs were quieter now, properly addressed rather than simply overruled. The shoulder was numb in the careful way of good medical management. Everything was still there, all the damage, all the accumulated hours of it. But the urgency was gone, and in its place was just the ordinary weight of a body that had worked very hard and needed to stop. I closed my eyes. Not because I was losing consciousness, just because I was tired, and I had nowhere else to be. And for the first time in 6 hours, the corridor was empty, and everyone who needed to get out was already out. That was enough. That was everything, actually. I slept.